So our next panel, sizing up development, about the state of the market for building right now in New York. And just to give you a quick high level, you know, if you were stuck inside your house the last 3 years and your Wi-Fi didn't work, you know, here's what you missed. 2020, market was relatively frozen. 2021, burst of activity, pent-up demand coming back. You know, since then, new development inventory generally stayed low. You know, the market hasn't been flooded with product. Prices have stayed relatively high. But now it seems like we're entering a little bit of a new phase. You know, there's some headwinds out there. We've got rising interest rates, higher construction costs, inflation, supply chain, possible recession, and then you're also looking at the possible expiration of one of the key tax breaks for development, 421A. So that's a lot of uncertainty, and the U word is bad for real estate generally. But there are pockets that, you know, could continue to do well, have been doing well, the high end, and also affordable housing. And, you know, the panelists I have today really span the gap, span the spectrum of development out there. So I want to introduce them. So I first want to introduce Miki Naftali. Great to have him here. And you don't really see many developers carving out the niche that Miki has today. So he got his start in New York with a flashy conversion of the Plaza Hotel, selling it to buyers from around the world, you know, for his employer at the time, Alad. And then since then, he went on his own and took a pretty different tact. He went to stable neighborhoods, building for locals, Upper East Side, Upper West Side, West Village, using tried and true architects, Robert A.M. Stern. And, you know, he's really hit it out of the park as a result. Last year, for example, he had the top selling new development in the city. It's 200 East 83rd Street, did $422 million in sales for the year. So that's a pretty good number. And then he's also got big sites in Brooklyn. He just branched out to Florida, so we're going to hear more about that strategy today. And next we have Meredith Marshall. And he is the co-founder of developer BRP Companies. And they have 3 million square feet under development and 10 projects in the pipeline as of the last real deal tally. And BRP was the third most active developer in the city. So that's behind Brookfield and Related, which is saying a lot. It's a lot of units. So in Harlem, BRP has one of the largest mixed-use projects that to start in Manhattan since the pandemic, and then they've got 2 600-unit monster projects in Jamaica, Queens, branching out to the suburbs. And Meredith might also have some choice word for politicians today. We'll see. You know, the politicians who have more interested in taking and saying sound bites rather than actually solving affordable housing. So maybe we'll hear some more about that. But the first question I want to start off with, guys, is you know, where do you think we're at in this cycle? I don't like to use baseball analogies, but the Mets and Yankees are doing well, so maybe it's okay. Where do you think we're at?
First of all, I think we need to thank Amir and Stuart and the team, right? Amazing, after we're all back here. That's great, thank you. Where we are, we're actually in a good place, but let's just dive in a little bit more. I'm going to speak about on the residential space. So we are active in the for sale, high-end, most of the product is a high-end condominium and rental development. The residential space is doing very, very well in New York and in Florida and South Florida, which we'll talk after that. I would say that in the last year and a half, we sold just over $1 billion in 3 projects on the Upper East Side. 1045 Madison Avenue, 1165 Madison Avenue, and 200 East 83rd Street, which was the best performing building in 2021. The reason is because there was not much inventory. We were preparing the inventory. We spent tremendous amount of time. We have a fantastic team in-house. Tremendous amount of time designing and building the best product for the buyers. And how do we know? We ask those of you here that are brokers that are meeting and dealing with your buyers each and every day and others, and we want to get as much information as possible on a specific neighborhood that we are developing. So we're not developing a building for ourselves, we're developing buildings for our future customers, for our virtual customers that eventually becoming the end one. At the high end of the market, I would say that at least 50% of them all cash, but even the one those that are taking loans, the high end of the market, they really use a private bank line of credit or some type of lines, and not necessarily typical mortgage financing.
They're not taking the mortgages to actually pay for the apartment.
Some of them do,
investing.
but most of them not. And the high end of the market, we all know that interest rates are up. We all know that mortgage rates are up, and it's we need to be concerned about it, of course. But at this point of time, it really, what we see is a softening in the low part of the market, what I call up to the 2 million, maybe slightly more. Those buyers are very sensitive to mortgage rates, and they should be. But then if they can't buy, they need to live somewhere. So what do? They rent.
Right.
So we are there on the rental side as well.
Right. And Marshall, we were talking a little bit about that earlier. Most of your product is rentals, but you do have some condos. You said 1 to 2 million range in Harlem, and you're seeing some interest rate sensitivity there.
Definitely. We build mostly affordable workforce, but we have some market rate developments in Westchester, Long Island, and Harlem. We're selling 135 condos in West Harlem, and I think we've sold about 90, and we have about 35 left. We sold 115 in 2016 in 9 months. It's taken us 3 years to sell.
Wow.
And, so in terms of interest rate sensitivity, the market's different. We had to sell in a pandemic. We didn't factor that in our business plan. No one does. But I think we're at a juncture where no one knows what's going on. The U word, uncertainty, is bad for most people. It's good for us because I'm bullish on New York. I'm bullish on the East Coast. We have high occupancy. On one side of the spectrum, we're renovating 17 nightshirt units. On the other side, we're building on $1 billion of market rate rentals from Westchester down to Atlanta. And, we're making money. We're doing good and doing well.
Yeah.
We're sort of mission driven on the affordable side. So it's not about the money, it's about housing people that take care of your elderly and you're young and first responders. So that makes you feel good, in the morning when you wake up. And particularly in this environment, everyone needs housing. So we're bullish. There's some interest rate uncertainty, but everyone's facing that. There's inflation, everyone's facing that. You just have to adjust your expectations and still close.
And I wanted to get into the affordable housing in a little bit and just some of the incentives there, but also just wanted to continue a little bit on that thread of the middle of that market there. Like, Miki, you just bought a site at 2nd Avenue and 79th. Does that start to creep into that interest rate sensitive category, or is that still 50% all cash type scenario?
I don't think so. First of all, it's 2nd and 77.
Okay, close.
Close enough. Well, look, 200 East 83rd Street became a huge success, right? We were blending on 3rd Avenue just over 3,000 a foot.
Yeah.
Some of the buyers are they took mortgages and they are taking mortgages or whatever. We are starting the closing soon. But, there are still most of the buyers, they have enough, I would call it, reserve, right? So maybe it's not comfortable for them. Maybe they are not happy. But remember, when even if you buy a unit, you take a mortgage today, it doesn't mean that you cannot refinance in 2 or 3 years when the mortgage rate will go down. I don't believe that in the next 20 years we're going to live in an environment of a high interest and high mortgage rates, right? So it's going to take some time, a year, 2, 3, I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball. But if you buy today, if you find what you really want and you buy today, and even if you pay for 2, 3 years a little bit higher mortgage rate, it's fine because you're going to refinance when the time is right. However, if you're going to wait, you're going to pay more in 3 years.
Right. And do you think that, I mean, we're talking about the Upper East Side now, which is, pretty solid market. Do you think you'll see a little bit more, like where would you not want to be developing now in Manhattan? Would you not want to be doing studios on the Lower East Side or one bedrooms in Hell's Kitchen? Do you think that's kind of stuff that's going to be a little bit more sensitive to the possible recession, interest rates, and so on?
Right. So again, it's really about the absolute price or the total price of a unit, right? Yes, it just makes sense that the smaller units, studio units, very small one bedroom or one bedroom in an areas that just the dollar per foot is less, so the total price is less. Those buyers usually are more sensitive, not all of them, but usually are more sensitive to mortgage rates.
Right.
And they just price out of the market. So what they usually do, which is the nature, right? It's just normal. They need to live somewhere, so they move to the rental market. I mean, we'll talk about it after that about the rental market, but what we are facing right now is just amazing, right?
Right.
With the demand.
So
and this is just at the beginning of the escalation of the mortgage rate. Now remember, so what will happen in the next 12 months when we already, the rental market is so strong and you're going to have additional people moving from the for sale market to the rental market. I think it's going to be quite...
Right. And you have a rental project in Williamsburg.
Right, but it's going to take
a couple
years. It's
going
to take a few years to complete it.
Yeah.
A big one, but yeah.
Which was my next question, just about, I mean, right now I believe that condo inventory is at 2018 levels. There's like 6,000 units on the market. That's not a huge amount of supply. Like Marshall and also Miki, are you scoping out land deals, and what are land prices like, and what does the pipeline look, 3-4 years out at this point? Does it look, are you getting any discounts, or is it pretty competitive?
In New York City? We're buying about $100 million property somewhere, and I have to rezone it. So in this political environment, we don't know what's going to happen. But we're seeing sellers get a little nervous, and we're using that. I'm giving away our strategy because we're saying, interest rates are rising, inflation, construction uncertainty, regulatory uncertainty surrounding the 421A or the as of right tax abatement controversy in New York. We're using that to bid down property. I'm selling some small sites that we don't want to develop, so I'm on both sides of that trade. But I like uncertainty. I like we're contrarians, right? If we were nervous, then you can't be in the development business because we have to sign guarantees, right, in uncertain markets. So it doesn't bother me. I kind of like it. It kind of,
It's the time for opportunity when there's disruption, right?
Exactly.
And Miki, are you finding land deals, acquisition deals that make sense now, or is it everything's priced higher than?
Well, it's difficult to find land deals or development sites that we think are the right ones for us almost each and every year. It's very, very difficult. We have a big team, very, very talented team that's working day and night to try to find the right deals. Look, as we speak right now, we have 10 projects in design or construction.
Wow.
A total of 4 million square feet, right? So we are busy as we speak, not only in New York, but this is also including South Florida. And almost 2,500 units, and I'm not talking about affordable, so that's expensive to build so many units, right? So it's not that we're not looking, but we can be a bit more selective. I tell you that we cannot buy today a site at the same price that we bought in 21. A couple of them really, really well. So the price is actually, at least for now, is still higher than during COVID. But hopefully we'll start to see some softening on that as well.
So you got some decent land deals in 2021 and kind of the heart of it.
We got fantastic deals.
Oh, that's great. Tell me a little bit about, Meredith, I think you're in 4 states now. Miki, you just bought property at World Center site in Miami, another $20 million deal in I guess first tell me about the Miami properties. Like when you're looking at development in South Florida now, like how does it pencil out relative to stuff here? Is it just like, a pretty, does it feel way more of a slam dunk type of thing?
Look, We believe that the development business is about following the demand. Okay, we think we're doing a good job, but we are not as good to just create a demand. So we follow the demand, and we follow the trend. There is no question that the population is growing, and even though it was some type of a pause during COVID, the overall trend is to move from the suburbs to urban locations, right? So New York is obviously great. We had difficult time in 2020, part of 21, but we're definitely back, and I think all of you agree with me here, right? South Florida is very, very strong, and it's not just a hype that is going to disappear, because when you really do your research and you spend the time, there are a lot of people moving not only from New York, from California, from Texas, right? So, there's so much demand over there. And there are qualified developers, but there are also some that are not that qualified. So we think that because of that, we have an opportunity.
Right.
So what we do at the Miami World Center, which is the downtown Miami, it's a very exciting area. It's actually the only area that the entire area rezoned and is becoming like a new vibrant area. So we are building 1.3 million square feet residential building with about 550 rental units and 200 condominium units. So it's a big, big building. But the demand, there is such a strong demand that we feel comfortable about it. Right. Obviously, it depends on the basis that you buy the land and the construction cost and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So, but that's what is behind it. Finding the demand, creating the product for the market, not for what you want, for the market. And then if you do that, you're usually going to be successful.
Yeah. I said I would do this for one member of the audience. If people in the back are having conversations, you want to just go out of the expo hall there? Thank you. So let's do the math on that for a second. I mean, if you're talking about 1.3 million square feet of development in the World Center site, you bought it for $40 million. I mean, what would $1.3 million of development site cost in Manhattan? I mean...
So, but correct. So land again, except what I call on the sand in Miami Beach. On the sand in a really prime location, the land cost is expensive. But overall, yes, substantially less than New York. Not only Manhattan, also Brooklyn. However, you can get less still. Outside of if you're not on the sand. So you're not getting the same rent. You're not getting the same dollar per foot when you sell.
Right.
And construction costs, which were substantially lower than New York 3 years ago, 4 years ago, are getting closer and closer to New York prices. So, when you do the math, yes, the land is less, and you say, you paid only 40, or you paid Fort Lauderdale only 20. I'm building 750,000 square feet in Fort Lauderdale on a $20 million land, right? So, but the land is only one portion of it.
Right. And construction costs keep creeping up. Marshall, you're diversifying towards the suburbs a little bit more now. What's kind of the strategy there? How does those projects look versus your New York City projects?
We just hired someone who loves the suburbs from Long Island. He loves Long Island and Westchester, and we're doing wood frame, and we found the same issue. The land is the same price, but the construction costs for wood frame are maybe 30% cheaper or less expensive. I won't use the word cheap with our developments. And so it's an attractive return on cost. And we had to diversify because we're sort of urban focused, and we just wanted to try something different in different markets. And we're building some single family homes in Long Island also. But we're buying a mall to repurpose in Atlanta, and that'll be about 1.2 million square feet.
Wow.
With a hotel, 250,000 square feet of retail. We have some anchors signed up already, and about 900 units of mixed income rental housing. And we're closing on a large site in DC. We'll build 1.5 million square feet, hotel, 200,000 square feet of retail. You get the same story, and about 1,200 units, including some condos and some townhomes. That project is going to be sort of 50-50 affordable because the city is city-owned land, so I'm not paying much for the land, and as the quid pro quo, we have to build affordable. And so we're going to branch out and we're going to replicate what we did in New York, which is large public-private partnerships. We make typical private equity returns on the private side, but on the public policy side, they'll be affordable, and we'll benefit from a developer fee on that end of the market.
Right. Yeah.
I see some relief coming. It takes 12, I don't know how long it takes you, Miki, but it takes 12 to 14 months for appliances. Now, what is that about, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, copper prices, steel prices, every sub is complaining, hey, I can't lock it in, and they want to, write in escalation. So we're battling that. But because we have large transactions, we have buying power, so that's starting to hold. But we're up about 10 to 15% over 2020 pricing at the beginning of the pandemic, but we just have to adjust. But rents, our pro formas are sort of 5% or more rather than 3% in our market. So we're seeing some relief on the revenue side, but there is some uncertainty about the supply chain and whether subcontractors will keep using that as an excuse to underperform.
Yeah, and you hear stories about contractors and subcontractors coming back, and they won't lock in a rate, right? They'll give you a rate, and it won't be good 10 days later. So that seems like a reality as well. One thing I wanted to ask about too, Marshall, issue we've been talking about today a little bit, 421A tax break, biggest tax break in the city for development, pretty integral to development. What do you think happens if that doesn't go through June 15th at the state level?
If it doesn't go through, we'll lose a lot of jobs because architects, engineers, subcontractors, able-bodied workers are not going to hang around for us to put our act together. So they're going to move to different markets, and that's what I want to talk about. That's what actually happened in 2008. When the market, New York took a big hit, we lost about 30% of our construction workers, right? And that never really came back. So if you look at 2004, 2005, when we were building, you had a lot more competition in the market, a lot more, greater bodies, right? More bodies. So now we're underbuilding, and we're underbuilding nationally. So by certain measures, depending on who you listen to, we're underbuilt between 5, 7, and 10 million units. And my wife is from Miami, and they're underbuilt, right? And these markets used to be inexpensive markets. Because they're underbuilt, pricing pressures have gone up. They used to be, when we started, believe it or not, $100 a foot to build in Miami. Now it's almost $250, $300 a foot. It's rivaling what we're doing.
Even more depends.
In New York, right? Atlanta's becoming expensive. DC's becoming expensive because there's a shortage of labor. So you have upward pressure on the labor markets, and we just don't have the workers. So if we don't have an as-of-right tax abatement, we're going to lose the ecosystem. It's going to shrink, and it's going to make it even more expensive to build housing. So I think the politicians should be admonished to get their act together. Right. And this is almost, can we sue them for municipal malpractice? You can sue your medical doctor, but this is malpractice because the 421A generates about 5,000 naturally occurring affordable units, and that represents $2.5 billion in benefit. The activists are claiming it's a $1.77 billion giveaway, but you're still up 800. Someone should just make that argument and do it publicly. Right. It's a no-brainer to reinstitute the tax credit and then make it permanent, right? Because New York is special. I'm in other places, you have to negotiate, the tax break. You've got to donate to this not-for-profit. You got to bring this person in, give land. It's all these bespoke transactions that's very inefficient. New York, as of right, you know what you have to do. You buy the land and you perform. If they want it to be discretionary, this is too big of a place to have that nonsense. So.
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing is, like, for the politicians you see arguing against 421A or good cause eviction, to me it's like, you can have people on both sides of the issue, but if they're not informed or up to speed on what the actual details of law and policy and housing is, that's the kind of the concerning thing. Like, I know you kind of felt that way.
Yes, I mean, good cause eviction, I think it was passed in Poughkeepsie and other markets, but that's not New York. New York's a complicated, vibrant, very efficient market. You can't introduce, rent control, in a big way in New York, and all that uncertainty. So hopefully that goes away. And you're right. The press can fully inform, the people that are making decisions, because it doesn't add up. The math doesn't add up, and it's all about math.
Yeah, yeah.
And hopefully we can settle this shortly.
Let me give you an example. But I agree with everything. But in addition to that, remember, it's not only that we're going to lose so many jobs, we're also not going to create enough affordable units. That's the big problem, right? So it's really ridiculous that this entire notion that someone will build affordable without benefits, it's just not going to happen. Who is going to build it? The state? The city? They're not going to build it. So honestly, you guys, all of you, or most of you are voters. So just, you need to speak up. You need to speak up. You need to make up your opinion. All those politicians are working for you. They sometimes tend to forget, but they are working for you. They are not, you're not working for them. So you need to speak up. You need to, we all need to push the agenda and make sure that they understand what is real and what is not. I'll give you an example, a real life example. We're building 1,000 units, just a little bit over 1,000 units in Williamsburg on Kent Avenue in 5 buildings. So phase 1 is 3 buildings, right? So we already there started the construction. Phase 2, we're going to start in the next few months. Now, the original plan was to build mostly rental over there. But I'm not going to meet the timeline for the June 15 for the 421A. So what choice do I have, or do we have? It's a fantastic site. Mm-hmm. We can develop for sale product and sell the units. But how exactly, and we're going to make a lot of money, how exactly it is going to help the city? How exactly it is going to help those that need the affordable units? Because in the alternative of the 421A, we were planning to build 30% affordable units, right? Okay, there is no plan. I can't get into, there is no new plan. They can make up their mind. We're going to build condominium units. We're going to sell them. We're going to make money. How exactly it's going to help anybody?
Right. There's a similar example in Harlem right now. The developer, Bruce Titelbaum, he's building a 900-unit project there, and he told the city or city council members he'd make 40% of it affordable. And then the local council member said, "Oh, that's a slap in the face."
Right.
And he's like, "Well, what do you mean? It's 40% affordable." Like, so, that to me is like maybe the slap in the face quote from the council member was kind of a soundbite. They wanted to get on the right side of the issue, but to me, it's like, I mean, I guess I could see some perspective where, okay, yeah, in somebody's version of reality, it should be 100% affordable, but that's not really the shared reality that we live in. So, Marshall, what do you think of that whole?
About Bruce Titelbaum's?
Yeah.
No comment. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm building successfully there with in the same marketplace.
Yeah.
No, I think the political pressures are causing angst, right? Because people were displaced, gentrified, and they think that by saying no, they can stop it, when the opposite effect happens, right? Because we don't build enough,
right? You
have pressures, and then, big money eats little money, and they get the unit, right? We need to build more, and it's a supply is part of the solution. So we should get the same council person should be around the table, and we should come up with the solution. The solution is, by Rebney's own account, New York is underbuilt by 540,000 units by 2030, right? So how many units do we need to build in the next 7-8 years? A lot, more than the city can pay for. So we need naturally occurring, what Miki was doing. How many units you give up 200 units? How many units are you building at 30% affordable housing?
Well, in this specific project, probably I would say 150 of them.
So 150 at 500,000, that's $75 million in public benefit without subsidy that the city was getting, right? And what is the loss in tax revenue? Someone has to just do the math, and it's simple. That politician's not doing the math. Mm-hmm. And we can't have separate equations, right? It's just one one equation. Is it a public benefit? Yes. Let the Naftali group have the tax abatement. So I think that's the issue. We're soundbiting, right? We're doing the MSNBC Fox thing, but we're not looking at the facts.
Mm-hmm.
I think that from our point of view, there is no change because we don't cut corners. I mean, engineering is the most important thing. The first thing that we need to make sure is the building is well designed, well engineered, and will last for a very long time. What I'm actually surprised is, and I think that this is the risk, well, I'm surprised when you go along the whatever, A1A or along the shore, and you look at, most of the buildings are old buildings. They're all built at the time that buyers didn't pay much. So it was relatively, many developers, they had tight budgets, they whatever, saved on whatever. I don't know if all the subcontractors were qualified or whatever. And to me, if I would own a unit in a 40 years old building on the beach, I would be concerned. Okay, that's my point. And I was actually expecting, I thought that we'll see more and more building like that the owners, the board of condominium will come together and say, you know what, it's time for us to sell. This is actually a very good market now. Maybe it's not going to be the same in a few years. It's the right time to sell because it doesn't make sense to either put so much money to improve the building on the engineering side, or to just stay in a building that, you're in the middle of the night, you think it's safe, it's not safe, or whatever. I'm actually quite amazed that there are almost no buildings that coming to market. And I hope that we're not going to face another disaster because those buildings, some of them are not safe.
Right, and there's been so many more regulations. I think we have to wrap it up there for time, but I want to thank these guys. Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Miki. Thanks, everybody out there. We got one more panel coming up. Should start momentarily.